Sports. The Yankees, the most enduring hit show on Broadway. So many bright stars, so many curtain calls. The Mets, so often having to play understudy to the Yankees, with only brief ownership of the keys to the city. Then 1999. 44 years since New York had last felt the drama of a subway series. The city pulsated to the electric sounds of October baseball.
Yankees win.
Tonight, New York baseball once again goes under the bright lights of prime time. And the former Astro goes on as the Mets' new ace. If they are to become New York's #1 hit show, they'll need a command performance against a proud champion. Yankee Stadium in New York, New York. And tonight, ESPN Sunday Night Baseball featuring an all-New York matchup. It's the Mets and the world champion New York Yankees. And about 3 hours before game time, the 8-mile trip was completed. The Mets team buses arriving from Shea Stadium, their shortest road trip of the year. Bobby Valentine led them on in. Mike Hampton right behind Dennis Cook. But now at game time, the skies have darkened and a strong wind is whipping around the Yankees pennant out there. Yankee fans and Mets fans both in attendance, and the volume has already been elevated here at Yankee Stadium. But right now there's a threat of some weather coming into this ballpark. The series recap: the Mets, the landslide on Friday, 12-2, and the Yankees reversed it yesterday, winning 13-5, setting up tonight's rubber match. It'll be for the New York Mets tonight. Mike Hampton on the mound. Hampton, who was 22-4 last year for Houston, and he's been strong lately after a slow start for the Mets. And all reliable David Cone, a big game pitcher, but struggling mightily so far this year. It has been rocking for 3 days, and it is rocking again tonight. Yankee Stadium in New York, 55,000 plus on hand here tonight. And there's Bobby Valentine in his 5th season as the manager of the New York Mets. And the Mets have improved in every year that Valentine has managed them. And here's the Mets Pepsi batting order. It will be young Jason Tyner, 23-year-old speedster out of Texas A&M, in left field. Derek Bell, right field. Edgardo Alfonso at second base. He's had a great year. And in the last month and a half, he's been even better than he's been the rest of the year, hitting .386 in the last 38 games. Alfonso is hitting .347 overall. Then Mike Piazza, he is DHing here in the American League ballpark, also having a great year, hitting .367. Robin Ventura at third base. Todd Zeile, who replaced John Olerud, is at first base. Jay Payton in center field. He's been hot the last week or so. Todd Pratt doing the catching, and Kurt Abbott in place of the injured Ray Ordonez. And on the mound for the New York Yankees is the right-hander David Cone.
And John, I don't think there's anybody in baseball who's not pulling for Cone to have a good outing tonight, unless you're a New York Mets fan. But David Cone is a true warrior. He's a guy that everybody kind of wants to pattern themselves after, a tough competitor. And I think, again, he has an 88-mile-an-hour fastball. If he can stay in that range, he can win. He just cannot make any mistakes. He just has a very small margin for error now, and he's going to have to be very, very good tonight in order to beat the Mets, who are swinging the bats well. And let's take a look at the defense behind him, and let's start at the most important place up the middle, and that's Derek Jeter at shortstop. And since Jeter has been back, he has really been playing well, swinging the bat well. He was on the disabled list for a while, went down to the minor leagues and worked on his game and got himself together, and he has really been swinging the bat well since that time.
So here is Jason Tyner. And a fastball from Cone for a called strike on the outside. Now Cone, without that 90-plus fastball that we remember from Cone in the past, has been more tentative this year. Throwing a lot of first pitch breaking balls and starting behind in the count all too often. In fact, in his last start, he faced only 19 hitters and was out of the game. But 14 of those 19 hitters, he threw the first pitch out of the strike zone. Back to the screen. He's ahead of Tyner. 1 ball and 2 strikes.
He reminds me of Roger Clemens. And the last time we saw Roger Clemens, he pitched a great ball game because he was able to throw a lot of first pitch strikes. Cone's success depends on the same type of situation. He has to throw strikes. He has to get ahead, and then he can get the hitters to chase his splitter or the slider out of the strike zone.
There's the splitter. Over at second. And the play by Bellinger. One away. The skies started to get dark over the South Bronx just a few minutes before game time, and the real heavy winds started whipping around inside this ballpark. We know that there's a possibility of some heavy rain coming in here for a short time, and we were thinking that maybe it was on its way when the weather changed so dramatically just before the start of the game. But we'll see. Here is Derek Bell, formerly with the Houston Astros, hitting .295, 8 homers, 31 batted in. That one is just a little bit low. 1 ball and no strikes.
And Bell got off to a fantastic start with the Mets. I mean, he was getting 2 and 3 hits every night, and he has really struggled. There you see what he's done in his last 15 ball games, a .113 batting average.
1 ball, 1 strike. David Cone, second in the league in earned run average last year, 4th in the league in strikeouts. He pitched in his 5th All-Star game. In July of last year, he became the 15th man ever to pitch a perfect game in regular season play. That's a little bit low, ball 2. 2-1. And then he continued on into the postseason. He won a very important game over the Red Sox in the American League Championship Series, Game 2, with a strong outing. Then he won Game 2 in the World Series in Atlanta, shutting down the Braves. Jeter at short. 2 down.
And John, I've talked to Tony Cloninger, who watches Cone in the bullpen and watches him throw, and he says he thought Cone had the best workout he's had all season, meaning, you know, throwing in between starts, working on what he wanted to try to do. And he thought he had everything was positive, so everything is a positive going into this start tonight.
Edgardo Alfonzo, 347 for the year, 12 homers, 47 batted in. That sinker a little bit low and inside for 1 ball and no strikes. In the National League, Alfonzo started today 7th in batting average. The man on deck, Mike Piazza, 4th in the league in hitting. 1 ball, 1 strike.
There's a lot of talk about all the great infielders and especially second basemen in this game, you know, now, and you know, a lot of the accolades go to Alfonso, but Jose Vidro up in Montreal is also setting a very torrid pace and swinging the bat well. He's overshadowed by Guerrero, but he is also a great hitter.
That's ruled a swing by plate umpire Ron Coco. 1 ball and 2 strikes. There's Piazza. He would be next.
And this has been a key for David. When he gets ahead, can he put some of these right-handed hitters away? You talked about the fact that he hasn't been able to get right-handers out successfully this year. We'll see what he does here.
Too low on the outside. 2 balls, 2 strikes to Alfonzo. And Alfonzo, he's just not going to swing if it doesn't look like a strike to him. He has walked 41 times this year, has a .446 on-base average. 2-2, 2 down, nobody on. That didn't miss by much up around the belt. Called too high, I'm guessing. 3-2 the count.
Well, that was an 86-mile-an-hour fastball. I still think he needs to be up around 88 to be successful. You say, what is 2 miles an hour? That makes a big difference. That's about 3 or 4 inches on the bat handle.
Slider for the strikeout. Baseball presented by Gumout. The Mets nothing. The Yankees coming up now. You see the part of the huge crowd here at Yankee Stadium. There's Joe Torre in his first 4 years as Yankee manager. The Yankees have been into the postseason all 4 years and have won the World Series 3 of those 4 years. Here's the Yankees Pepsi batting order tonight. The red-hot Derek Jeter at shortstop, hitting .492 in the 13 games since his return from the DL. Bernie Williams, center field. Paul O'Neill had a big day here yesterday in right field. Jorge Posada, the catcher, is DHing tonight. Tino Martinez at first. Shane Spencer, left field, hitting 6th. Scott Brocious at third base. Chris Turner, the catcher, hitting 8th. Clay Bellinger at second base, batting 9th. And on the mound, the the former star left-hander of the Houston Astros, now the imported ace for the New York Mets. And Hampton has been pitching like an ace his last several times out there, Joe.
And Johnny has been using his sinker very well. He's been getting a lot of ground balls. And that 6-5 record tells you that he got off to a slow start, but he's been pitching very well lately. But very good at getting the ground balls, and he changes speeds a lot of change-ups. And as long as he throws strikes, he's going to be successful.
Derek Jeter. Jeter was not hitting that well before his injury. Fastball in there for a called strike. Jeter has been hitting extremely well since he came back and is hitting .341, tied for 7th in the league overall. Right to first, and Zia makes the play unassisted, 1 away.
And that's a good sign for Hampton. Ground ball right off by the first hitter. And we have Kurt Abbott playing shortstop in place of Ray Ordonez. Remember last year with Ordonez and Alfonso, they were maybe the 2 best middle infielders together in all of baseball. In fact, the Mets infield was considered the best ever infield. They had John Olerud at first base to go along with Robin Ventura at third base. And it was a great infield, although this year they have not played as well defensively.
Now, you didn't consider it the greatest infield.
Well, I didn't argue with it, John, because when I looked at it defensively, I mean, that was, I don't know if you've ever had 4 guys who were better defensively at their positions.
This is Davy Johnson. He was putting in a vote for his old Baltimore infield back in the 60s.
Well, he could get a vote as well. I mean, there are a few infields that were pretty good, but I can't argue that this wasn't the best.
Bernie bounces it foul. Bernie is hitting .296. He got 12 homers. He leads the Yankees with 53 RBIs. And the Yankees could argue back in the early 60s when they had Bill Skowron, Bobby Richardson, Tony Kubek, and Clete Boyer. They were pretty happy with that infield.
Well, I'm sure they were happy with it, but this one was better. I mean, it was. Look, there are a lot of great infields. We're just talking about the fact that maybe at each position. I mean, I'm sure there were players at other positions who were better individually, but we're talking about a collective unit.
Well, I'm just telling you, be careful. There's 55,000 people here tonight. There's an electricity coursing through the stadium. As you see, the Mets have not lived up to
this year
the defense that they showed last year in that infield. But I'm in a feisty mood myself, Joe.
Okay.
I got that adrenaline pumping myself. You say something, I'm challenging it right away. How does Hampton look to you so far tonight? Well,
the couple of balls there to Bernie, he's gotten up, but before that, he was keeping the ball down.
I think he looks great. Yeah, I'm sort of into that New York mode.
State of mind.
Yeah, don't get in my way, buddy. 2-2 the count to Bernie Williams. 1 out, nobody on. Left center base hit. Tyner picks it up. Bernie is aboard, and now Paul O'Neill.
Well, Bernie Williams is a good hitter. He has more power from the right side normally. This is a changeup. He gets a little bit out in front, but because it was up a little bit, he was able to fight it off a little bit and hit it into the left field for a base hit. He didn't hit a line drive, but that counts as well.
Lee Mazzilli, the first base coach, talking to Bernie Williams over there. Mazzilli, one of several Yankee coaches and or managers who used to be with the Mets. Paul O'Neill. That's ball 1. O'Neill, a big day yesterday. He had 3 hits, and he had real clutch hits. And as we look at we were looking a moment ago at Mazzilli. You saw the rain starting to fall around Mazzilli. So there is moisture now at Yankee Stadium. Ball 2 to O'Neill. O'Neill fueled the Yankee comeback yesterday. They were down at one time 5-3 to the Mets, and they came back and won the ball game 13-5. O'Neill, for one of the rare times yesterday, was the designated hit. Oh, there goes the umbrella, Joe. I hope that wasn't yours. Foul ball. 2 balls and a strike to O'Neill. O'Neill was the DH yesterday, first time in a long time. And, you know, he's kind of a restless guy. And he went into the batting cage between the bats, took some swings. He ran some wind sprints. He went jogging in the hallways in the bowels of Yankee Stadium. O'Neill, like tonight's pitcher David Cone, like Roger Clemens, is 37 years old. .299 batting average, 7 homers, 12 doubles, 38 runs batted in. David Cone, a strong first inning for Cone. I'm sure he wouldn't mind having a couple of runs on the board right away either. 2-2. Just a little light rain falling in Yankee Stadium now. I'm wondering, Joe, if they got some word from the Weather Service that something heavy was not likely to fall here, because I'm sure Joe Torre and the Yankees and Bobby Valentine and the Mets would hate to see their pitchers start a ball game and then have to sit around during a rain delay. O'Neill just got a piece of it. 2-2.
Hampton has made 3 good pitches in a row to O'Neill that will slide her down and away, and O'Neill was just able to fight that one off.
Jorge Posada is on deck. Mike Hampton. I thought he would get more consideration for the Cy Young Award in the National League last year. Randy Johnson won it, and Randy Johnson, you certainly could not argue with the way he pitched. But when you look at the results that the two had, Hampton had a better record than Randy, 22-4. And especially the results that the Astros had in the games he pitched. They were 29-5 in his starts. Now that's sort of the definition of, in my mind, what the Cy Young Award is all about. He muscled it into center, base hit. Williams will stop at second.
Well, he had O'Neill reaching for the slider away, and he kept it down. O'Neill, being a good hitter, fought off the good pitches, and then Hampton leaves this pitch up in the strike zone. It's a fastball up, and he hits him on the hands, but he's so strong he's able to muscle it into center field, as you said. But if that ball's down, it does not go into center field. Not a good pitch from Hampton after all the good pitches that he had made. But you have to give O'Neill credit. He fought off the good ones, and he handled the one that he made the mistake on.
Now Jorge Posada. His first year as the Yankees' regular everyday catcher, and he has responded big time, having a sensational year with the bat. Tonight he's the DH. He takes up and away. 1 ball and no strikes. Both teams are in effect taking advantage of the American League's designated hitter rule, and in effect resting their catchers tonight and keeping them in the lineup. Hip hip Jorge. 12 homers, 31 batted in. 2 men on, 1 man out. Off the outside. 2-0. Well, Hampton, in his first 7 starts, had a horrible time throwing strikes. He had high walk totals. He was averaging a walk per inning for his first 7 starts. Then he got it figured out and has been real stingy with the walks lately. Deep into right center. Payton streaking across the green to the warning track, to the wall, makes the leaping catch. The runners were halfway, and they'll go back. Williams to second, O'Neill to first.
And I think Payton hurt himself when he crashed into the wall. He's down out there in the right center field. This is a big ballpark, and it allows you to run the ball down, especially if you get it high in the air, as Posada did. He hit the ball well, but the ball was stayed up there a long time, and we saw the speed of Payton as he ran this ball down. Now look how far he has to go. He's going to go way over here to make the catch. Now watch, he leaps, and now he crashes into the wall. Now once he throws it back in, he went down to his knees. And a nice leaping catch there. And he says he's okay.
Bobby Valentine and one of the trainers were on their way out to center field to see to Payton, and he waved them off. So Hampton makes good use of the spacious dimensions of Yankee Stadium. Now Tino Martinez. 279 batting average. 1 ball and no strikes. Tino, 6 homers, 31 batted in. Not a whole lot of power yet from Tino Martinez, who hit more than 40 homers just a couple of years ago. That is a called strike. 1 ball, 1 strike. Ernie Williams, who singled, is at second base. O'Neill at first base, also singled. Now with 2 down. Tino Martinez, 28 homers in each of the last 2 years. 44 in 1997, and he's driven in over 100 runs for 5 consecutive years. He dropped down a little bit. Got it by him. 1 ball and 2 strikes. Giving a little bit of a different look there.
I think he dropped down and threw him a little sinker. It took a little bit off, and the ball sunk down and in on him. Tino was actually out in front of it.
Yankees have not hit that well this year in these kinds of situations. It's been a hallmark of their team the last 2 years, hitting in the clutch. Again, coming in via the first baseline, he just missed off the outside. There's Jorge Posada, who crushed that ball to center. Hard to say what the wind is doing to a ball in the air right now. I don't know if Posada's ball got knocked down or it got pushed. What we do know is that Pate made a nice play on it. Williams and O'Neill ready to go in anything from second and first respectively. Now Pratt will run out to talk to Hampton. Tino Martinez and Mike Hampton, both native Floridians. And that real strong wind that started to whip up just before the start of the game has died down considerably now. And as far as we can tell, there is no rain falling at all. No score first inning. 2 on, 2 out. High and foul off the third base side, and he reached back for a little something extra on that one. That's the first pitch that he's thrown this inning above 90.
And a good hitter like Tino, he just fought it off. There's a fan with divided emotions. She's got a Yankee hat on the front and the Mets hat on the back. I guess at some point she'll turn that around when the Mets are hitting.
Well, she can't lose.
Yeah.
She's the smartest one in the place. She's hedging her bets. 2-2 pitch. He swung and missed. Strike 3. Came back with a cutter or a slider down and away. Tough pitch. No score after 1. Mike Piazza, then Robin Ventura and Todd Zeile. Yankees nothing. We go to the second inning. David Cone getting ready to face Mike Piazza.
And John, I think his first big test in this ballgame came with Edgar Alfonso hitting. He got ahead of him, and he straightened him up with a fastball. This is what made that pitch so successful. He was able to throw the fastball inside, and that's what I said in the beginning of the telecast. He has to pitch inside to keep them honest and let them know that he will throw a fastball inside. That way he may get them to chase the slider. If he doesn't pitch them inside, they will not chase the slider.
Mike Piazza, and that sinker in there for a called strike. Piazza hit a grand slam against Roger Clemens for the first scoring of this series, and he hit it over the 408-foot marker in straightaway center. And he pitches inside there to Piazza. 1 ball, 1 strike.
I mean, he has to do that, John. What happens if you do not pitch inside or keep these guys honest? If you make any mistake over the plate, you know, over the outer half even, they can drive the ball. But if you straighten them up and then you make that mistake, they'll have to be reaching for it just like that.
Man.
So he is, so far in this ball game, his game plan is working against the right-handed hitters, but you still have to put them away. Now watch, he straightened him up. Now watch him. See his front shoulder go? That's what happens when a guy pitches you inside. You're not sure if he's going to come in there again.
He goes in there. Strike 3 called. Piazza with a word for Ron Culper, the plate umpire.
that was not really the pitch that he was expecting to get Piazza out with, but he wanted to come back inside again to keep him honest, and then he's going to try to get him to chase the slider away again. But he gets the call. Here's a fastball in, and you can see it running in sharply. But Piazza thought it was inside, and he may have thought it was low.
Robin Ventura, 1 ball and no strikes.
But this is another test for Cone. He's got 3 real good hitters in a row here. Alfonso, Piazza, and now Ventura. Because Ventura's left-handed, he has to change his pattern. And you see that he has not thrown the fastball inside. He's thrown a breaking ball away, and now the splitter.
2-0 the count to the veteran Ventura. He's faced Cone many times over the years in the dirt for a ball. 3-0. Ventura, of course, a long-time American Leaguer with the White Sox. 5 for 22 lifetime with 2 home runs against Cone. 3-0 the count. He's had a quick look as Ventura, third base coach Cookie Rojas. Zeal on deck. Too low.
But you could see that he was probably hitting, and Cone thought he was, so he threw him a sinker.
For the walk for Ventura, he's the Mets' first base runner. There's Mel Stottlemyre, who at one time had the same job, pitching coach with the New York Mets. Back in the 80s, Joe Torre on the left, Willie Randolph on the right. Joe Torre himself used to wear the Mets uniform. He used to manage the Mets. I mean, do you remember that? That was a long time ago.
Of course I remember.
Did he ever walk you intentionally? Zeal, and the slider just off the outside. 1 ball and no strikes. Todd Zeal replaced John Olerud. Olerud, who did a very fine job for the Mets. Zeal had the one disadvantage of having to move to a strange position, first base. He takes the called strike with another breaking ball, 1-1. He's hit real well. 11 homers, 43 batted in.
And you can see Zeal's not happy either, John, about that call. And he steps out and talks to Ronald Culpa about it.
1 ball, 1 strike. Another slider. That one up over the plate, hit into the upper deck, foul off to the right. 1 ball and 2 strikes. You can see lightning lighting up the sky out beyond the center field barrier here at Yankee Stadium. See the famed facade of Yankee Stadium aligning the upper part of the center field backdrop. Right field, O'Neill. So that was the only fastball that Zeal saw in that at bat, and he's an easy out to O'Neill and right, with Ventura back to first.
And that's another good pitch there by Cone. He threw him sliders. This is a fastball in, but even though the target's away, watch where this pitch is. It's inside, and as you can see, Zeal fighting it off. Inside out's the ball. Even though the target was away, it looks like Cone got away with, moving the ball inside. So good spot, and he got away with it. But I think Zeal was looking breaking ball because he had thrown him so many breaking balls. He hesitated a little bit. Fastball got on him.
Now Jay Payton. Payton has been a hot hitter lately. Check swing and a pop-up. Tino Martinez and Clay Bellinger give chase, but it is back in amongst the spectators, out of play. Payton in the last 8 games has had 4 homers, 9 RBIs, and a .448 average. He was hitting only .206 back on May the 4th, or May the 24th, and was not playing a whole lot. He's playing a lot right now, and his bat is keeping him in there. He hit a home run yesterday against Andy Pettitte. Slider. 0-2 as the Yankee fans begin their "Let's Go Yankees" chants. Todd Pratt would be next. Now with 2 strikes, as they've done for a long, long time here in the stadium. Many of the fans rise to their feet, and that groundswell of noise accompanies the pitcher, as if they can somehow, through the sheer force of their will, get the strikeout for Tony. Maybe it works. Fastball got him looking. That's 2 strong innings for the veteran right-hander. We go to the last of the Mazzilli, the Yankee first base coach, running a microphone tonight. And when Bernie Williams got to first base in the first inning, Lee Mazzilli had some comments for him regarding Todd Zeile, the way he plays off the bag for him.
Quick now, take him out of the picture if he stays out there and jumps around. Okay, quick. He's got a quick move. 1, 2, 1, 3. I give you time. If Zeile's out there, take him out of the picture. Just look at the picture. All right, he's out. Don't worry about him.
He said a lot right there in that small amount of time.
Shane Spencer, the hitter, and a curveball in the dirt for ball 1.
Basically, what he says is that you have to take the first baseman out of the pitcher. Forget about the first baseman, whether he's jumping around or moving around. All you want to do is watch the pitcher itself. Now, what he also said when Bernie asked him, was he quick? He said, yeah, he's quick. 1, 2, 1, 3, meaning it takes him that long to deliver the ball.
1 ball, 1 strike now to Shane Spencer. Now to get the Mets have their first baseman. Olerud used to do it. Now Zeile does it. Instead of just the old style of just staying right in the bag with the runner, they get over right in front of the runner, and then they start bluffing back to the bag. So Mazzilli's advice was, forget about Zeile. Take him out of the picture.
Well, it's only really effective, John. It only makes sense to me if there's a left-handed hitter up, because you want to cover that hole. And if you're holding the guy on the bag, you jump off the bag, you're moving away, and if he hits the ball behind you, you're in trouble. But most right-handed hitters are not going to hit the ball directly down the right field line. But it does make a difference if a base runner starts to think about it. And that's what they were trying to do there. Keep him from thinking about it. That's what Mazzilli said. Forget about it. Just watch the pitcher.
2-2 the count. Check swing. Sharp cutter or slider down and in, missing. 3-2 the count. Now to Shane Spencer. He's got some power. 8 homers for the year in 167 at-bats. 257 average. Brocious and Turner will follow. No score in the game. Just off the outside, and it's a leadoff walk to Spencer. Dave Wallace, the pitching coach, looking on from the Mets dugout.
And Dave Wallace said a couple of weeks ago when we were in Los Angeles that they had really adjusted Mike Hampton, his pitching motion, in that he felt that Mike was getting too much of his weight out over his back foot, and he was, he couldn't find the same slot all the time. What they've done now is make his back foot flatter so that he has the same platform on every pitch, and he's able to find the slot a little bit better so that he throws from the same arm position.
That's a called strike on the outside. And it is 0-1.
And he said one of the reasons that it took them a while to do that, even though Hampton was struggling early, is that, it takes a while for a pitching coach to know the personality of a new pitcher who comes on his team.
Joe, this is what you were talking about a little while ago. Zeile over in front of the runner, Shane Spencer. 1 ball, 1 strike to Scott Brocious.
And I said before, the first time I ever saw that was Chuck Tanner. He did that. He had Willie Stargell in Pittsburgh, and he started doing that. Moving off the bag, as you see Zeile there. So it was kind of something Chuck Tanner started. The first time I ever saw it, anyway.
Ball 2 rather, down and away. 2 balls and a strike. Jim Leland. It was a characteristic of many of Leland's teams. Scott Brocious. He had not done a whole lot of hitting. Brocious, who had an outstanding season 2 years ago for the Yankees, and then an even better World Series. He won the MVP of the World Series. Runner going. Base hit, right center. Bell into the alleyway to cut it off. Spencer to third, and he'll be held there by Randolph.
Good job of hitting by Brocious. Actually, the defense was pretty good also, because Alfonso was not covering on it. You use a hit and run so you can open up this hole over here on the right side. Now watch, Alfonso is there. He wasn't covering. The shortstop was covering, but the ball is lined over Alfonso's head. So a good job of hitting there by Brocious, and a good defensive job by the Mets. They guessed correctly.
Now Chris Turner. A cold strike on the inside. Turner has not, as the backup catcher to Jorge Posada, played a whole lot. Jorge had started 51 of the first 57 Yankee games. only deep enough to get Spencer home. The catch made by Payton, and Spencer's in to score. 1-0 New York. The Yankees leading the Mets.
Good job by Turner to get the ball into the outfield. It was a high pitch, and he jumped all over it. Good job here. See, the pitch is up, and you're going to hit most high fastballs into the air, and he gets it in the air. Good job there.
I would have figured Hampton would have been trying to make him hit a ball on the ground with one of his sinkers or sliders. Here is Bellinger. That's a called strike.
Well, I think he may have been trying to get the ball down. Obviously, he didn't mean to throw it that high, but I agree with you that a sinker was a better pitch in that situation, but maybe he thought he could get him to pop it up or chase one out of the zone.
Back to the bag at first is Brocious. Brocious has not stolen a base this year. Clay Bellinger in there tonight for Chuck Knobloch. Knobloch has had problems with the forearm on his left arm. He took some live batting practice tonight for the first time since last Monday and was not able to go. A bloop over the middle, base hit. Hit very softly by Bellinger. Little forehand lob just over the net. He might have won the French Open with a shot like that.
Well, it's a changeup. It's a changeup from Hampton. You can see him choking it and gripping it. And it's not a bad pitch. In fact, the pitch is off the plate outside. But Bellinger's able to get enough wood on it to bloop it over the infield. It was actually off the end of the bat.
So Bellinger, utility infielder, playing tonight because of the unavailability of Knobloch, gets a base hit. Now Derek Jeter. Jeter grounded to first his first time. Jeter has been extraordinarily hot. Got jammed with that cutter. They get one just barely at second. Abbott with the feed to Alfonso, retiring Bellinger with Brocious going to third.
Well, if you're Ray Ordonez at shortstop, you may try something fancy here, try to get the ball to him quicker. You see, he waits for it, and then he gives him a bad toss. He actually gripped the ball with in the palm of his hand, and the toss kind of went up a little bit, so Alfonso had to stretch out to get it, stay on the bag.
Now Bernie Williams. 0-1. 2 down with Brocious at third base. Jeter over at first base. Jeter is the Yankees stolen base leader. He's had 12 steals in 13 tries. Bernie singled his first time tonight. 1 run already in for the Yankees. Got the call on that one. A low strike in the outside. 0-2 the count at Bernie. Turns right around and gets into the face of Ron Culper.
Well, I can see why he would question that. It appeared to be low, but you have to remember it's where it crosses the plate, not where the catcher catches it. And Culper felt like it went across the plate and then sunk below the knee.
And Bernie is down on strikes, 3 pitches. So the Yankees get just the 1 run. 1-0 Yankees. Mets coming up in the third. With some rain falling again. For a moment it was raining rather heavily. But now just a light sprinkle falling at Yankee Stadium as the Mets come to bat here in the third inning with Todd Pratt. By the way, the Red Sox are here in New York again tomorrow night. They were just here 2 weeks ago, and they're here again tomorrow to start a 3-game series. Top 2 teams in the American League East. David Cohn throwing, and you could forgive Cohn for shaking his head here.
Well, that Posada wanted that pitch, and he's basically saying you've been calling it on our guys, and that pitch was low.
One back out of play. 1 ball, 1 strike to count.
I said Posada, but it's Turner behind the plate tonight. Posada's the DH.
Well, I understand that when you say Posada, you mean that as whoever the Yankee catcher is.
Whoever Yankee catcher is.
Yeah, it's just
in this
Posada.
case, Chris Turner instead of Posada, but I was so used to putting Posada's name down, I put it behind the plate again today.
Slider just a little bit low. 2-1 the count. We'll be seeing the Red Sox on ESPN come Wednesday afternoon on ESPN 2 from Yankee Stadium. A special Wednesday afternoon telecast from here. Slider, beauty on the outside corner. 2-2 to Todd Pratt, hitting .317, 6 home runs and only 63 at bats. Pratt will be followed by Kurt Abbott and the leadoff man Jason Tyner. 1-0. The Yankees lead the Mets. 3rd inning. And he ran that four-seamer, kind of exploded it up and in. 2-2.
That's the pattern he has basically used. He has followed the fastball with a slider away. He's followed the slider away with a fastball in. And so far, it's been working perfectly for him. See, that fastball is even out of the strike zone. Slider away. His changing speeds, he's using the fastball, then the slider. Slider, fastball. And that's exactly how he's pitching. And so far, he's been very successful with that.
Dropped down south of the border with the little Laredo action on that one. 3-2. Slider again, and he misses with it. Ball 4. Second walk allowed by Cone. Pratt goes to first. Well, coming up on Wednesday at 1 o'clock, it's already sold out. The Yankees and the Red Sox, those two ancient hated rivals. ESPN 2, 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Pacific. Then Wednesday night, the White Sox and the Indians, the top two teams in the American League Central head-to-head. Some of you will see Atlanta and Pittsburgh on ESPN at 7 o'clock, followed by the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Los Angeles Dodgers from beautiful Dodger Stadium at 10 o'clock Eastern time. 7 o'clock Pacific. Here's Kurt Abbott. Top foul. Tito Martinez. Not much foul territory here. And that one works against David Cone as it drops back in amongst the spectators.
John, I want to go back to the last pitch he threw to Todd Pratt. He threw him a breaking ball, 3-2, leading off the inning. Now, David Cone normally would throw you a fastball, try to throw you a sinker, get you to put the ball in play. But when you lose a little bit of your confidence, you try things that you're not normally accustomed to doing. That was more to strike him out than to let him put the ball in play. He was trying to fool him completely. And when you do that, you try to be a little bit too fine, and that's one of the things that gets him in trouble. Because you definitely do not want to walk the leadoff hitter, especially when you're at the bottom of the order. Those are the guys you want to make sure that they put the ball in play. Now, he had a 3-2 count on Todd Pratt leading off the inning. He's been very successful so far using his fastball and his breaking ball. Throws his breaking ball outside. Now he has a runner at first base, and you're at the bottom of the order with Kurt Abbott.
0-2 to Abbott. Excellent fastball hitter. But Cone got that fastball by him. Strike 3.
And see, if you have the confidence in your fastball to throw it, you'll get more hitters out. I mean, it's just a matter of if you're a hitter and you get 15 straight hits and then you go 0 for 5, you start to wonder how good a hitter you actually are. And that's what happens to a pitcher. Cone has been successful his entire career. All of a sudden he's struggling, and now his confidence is struggling a little bit because 3-2, that should have been a fastball to Todd Pratt. And I think, you know, he realized that afterwards, so he went after Abbott and just struck him out, even though Abbott's a good fastball hitter.
There's a curveball in there to Jason Tyner, the young leadoff hitter, and it is 0-1. Well, against right-handed hitters in the past, I mean, right-handers just... David Cone was a graveyard for right-handed hitters, but not this year. However, tonight, he has been shutting them down. 4 strikeouts against the righties. Tyner fouls this one out of play. Quickly, he's behind in the count, 0-2. Tyner is one of only 2 left-handed hitters in Bobby Valentine's order tonight. Ventura is the other.
And you can see he's not throwing 90 miles an hour, but what David Cone has been able to do is make his fastball look better because he is using his breaking ball.
0-2. Runner at first, 1 out. Tried to backdoor him with the slider, just missed with it.
And we haven't really seen anyone take a real good swing at David Cone tonight. Even at the fastball, we've seen guys that are a little late on it because they're looking breaking ball. And a lot of that has to do with the scouting report. The scouting report that the Mets received, I'm sure, was the same scouting report that we've been reading.
Fastball, heeled foul off to the left, 1-2.
And that is that Cone's fastball is below average, below his, normal, and that he's throwing a lot of breaking balls. But we see his fastballs consistently 85, 86, 87, but he's using it. And that is why they're not quite ready for it. And no one has really been able to turn on it or pull one foul yet.
Caught at second by Bellinger. And a double play. Pratt at first thought it was headed for the outfield and could not get back. Now O'Neill, Posada, and Tino Martin bring their umbrellas. So they had to make do. Not everybody remembered to bring their rain slickers. So they had to somehow get by. But this is New York, Joe. They find a way. They know how to survive in the big city. Here's Paul O'Neill against Mike Hampton. Curveball inside for ball one. O'Neill singled his first time. 1-0, New York leading. There was a question as Hampton was struggling so much early in the season as to whether he was going to survive here in New York. He was just not the same pitcher that they thought they were getting. Good fastball to the outside. 1 ball, 1 strike to O'Neill. Posada and Tino Martinez will follow. Hampton now pitching in the rain. Great athlete, great all-round athlete. Good little slider. 1 ball and 2 strikes. O'Neill drying off the business end of the bat. And that is in the dirt for a ball. 2 balls, 2 strikes. I mean, if the outer part of the bat got a little too wet, I mean, would he not be able to hit the ball as well?
No, I think he's just meticulous about his bat. He loves his bat. And his bat has served him well. He wants to take care of it, He doesn't want it wet.
Hates to see the bat get wet.
The real problem you have in the wet conditions,
that's too long, 3-2.
both the hitter and the pitcher, is that your spikes get clogged. You see Paul O'Neill hit his to try to clean them out, and you'll see the pitchers do the same thing. That's the problem that you have, is that they get clogged and you slip a little bit. And the other problem you have as a hitter is that the rain gets on the bill of your cap, and then it kind of falls off, and it distracts you.
O'Neill chops one just an inch foul. Todd Zeile thought that it was fair. First base umpire Randy Marsh said no. And kicked off foul. And the rain is getting heavy now. We just heard some thunder rumbling off in the distance. You may have heard the crowd react to it. But this rain now getting heavier, and many of the fans are heading for cover. But not Mike Hampton and Paul O'Neill. They're still out there, 3-2. He dropped down and got him looking.
The spirits of the entire country. And it came at a time when America sorely needed its spirits lifted. Like Babe Ruth's called home run, Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak, Jackie Robinson's breaking of the color line, and Bobby Thompson's shot heard round the world. The saga of the 1969 world champion New York Mets transcends the boundaries of baseball history and holds a special and lasting place in American folklore. Their timing couldn't have been better. As one of the most violent and turbulent decades in modern American history came to an end, an era that shook the nation to its very foundations and left deep scars across the face of the country, the Mets brought people together as perhaps nothing else could. As underdogs, the Mets appeal to a basic instinct in the American character. America loves an underdog. And the 1969 Mets were the most underdog in the history of our national game. As 100-to-1 shots to go all the way, their heroics on the ball field in many ways America's landing on the moon. Indeed, Neil Armstrong's lunar stroll may have been a giant leap for mankind, but the Mets' victory was a triumph for the common man, the very heart and soul of America. Perhaps never before in the annals of American sports history did a team lift the spirit of a nation as did the Mets in 1969. That year, from Boston to Los Angeles, from Bangor to Seattle, from Detroit to Baton Rouge, America was a Mets fan. And behind all the excitement and drama of the 1969 Mets stood one man, their leader and manager, Gil Hodges. He had molded the team and gotten the best from each man. He had steadied them and made them believe in themselves. And he led them to one of the most inspiring and exciting world championships in baseball history. Year when the Miracle Mets brought the entire nation to its feet cheering with their drive to the World Championship. Now, HermanSports.com is proud to present the official film about that unforgettable year. The greatest season, the 1969 World Champion New York Mets. This video features never-before-seen footage from that season, as well as interviews with Miracle Mets Tom Seaver, Cleon Jones, Ron Swoboda, Jerry Kuzman, and many, many more. This collector's edition video is yours for only $14.95 plus shipping and handling. Call the toll-free number on your screen to order or visit our website at HermanSports.com. All major credit cards are accepted. This video is a must for all serious baseball collectors. Relive one of the most exciting years in baseball history. The greatest season, the 1969 World Champion New York Mets. After the 1957 baseball season, the Brooklyn Dodgers and the New York Giants left New York for California. A golden era in baseball history came to an end. For the first time in the annals of the professional game, the city of New York did not have a National League team. Then, in 1961, the National League expanded with new franchises in Houston and New York. Both teams to begin play in 1962. The New York Mets were born. The first manager of the Mets was the legendary and incomparable Casey Stengel. After managing the New York Yankees to numerous pennants and world championships in the late 40s and throughout the 1950s, Stengel could not have imagined in his worst nightmare what he would face as the manager of the 1962 expansion New York Mets. As with any expansion team, the original Mets were composed of cast-offs, over-the-hill veterans, and players who did not belong in the major leagues. The original Mets, however, reached unprecedented heights of incompetence in their inaugural season. They were, perhaps, the worst team in modern baseball history, losing the staggering total of 120 games while winning only 40. Their pitching and hitting were absolutely horrendous, and the defense was even worse. This team had a unique propensity for snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. If there was a way to lose a baseball game, the Mets found it. In fact, many people who witnessed that first season will swear to the fact that the amazing Mets indeed found heretofore unknown ways to lose. The team's management knew that the first few seasons would be losing ones, so they tried to give the fans what they wanted. Of course, it was a brilliant public relations move bringing in Casey Stengel to manage the team. His wit and wisdom made all the losing bearable. The old professor exhibited remarkable patience with his horrendous team. Still, there were times when even Casey reached his wit's end. At one point late in the season, Stengel looked down his bench at his team and mumbled to himself, "Can anybody here play this game?"
My opening night in the Major League, Sandy Koufax pitched a no-hitter and struck out 18 New York Mets, and I knew it was going to be a long, tough career. But I joined the club later on that year in September with Casey, and we had a lot of fun. I enjoyed playing for him. Might have took me a few years to understand what he was telling us, but we had a lot of older players, idols from the New York Mets fans. So our guys were really at the twilight of great careers, but on the downside.
It was a travesty. There were no more Major League teams, and there were better AAA teams playing at the time than they were. But traveling with the Mets in '62, the best way I can describe it, it was like traveling with a circus. There was a ringmaster, Casey Stengel, a bunch of clowns, and the fans in every town were glad to see us because it usually meant 2 or 3 wins when you got there.
My first year up to the big leagues was in the polo ground, and all we talked about in the clubhouse that time, the guys who were on the disabled list, who was going to go into the trainer's room and lay on the training table the longest, and that kind of thing, and who was going to screw up to lose the ball game that particular day.
In the expansion draft, the Mets front office obtained as many National League veterans as they could, knowing these players would be familiar to the fans. Players such as Charlie Neal, Richie Ashburn, Frank Thomas, and Roger Craig. Unfortunately, whatever skills and abilities these players brought to the team were offset by the incompetence of the players that surrounded them. Unquestionably, the symbol of the 1962 Mets was Marvelous Marv Throneberry. A product of the Yankee organization, Throneberry was a left-handed hitting first baseman with decent power. His problem stemmed from the fact that Marvelous Marv had difficulty catching a baseball that was either thrown or hit at him. This can be a very serious flaw to a fella trying to play first base in the major leagues. Another player the expansion Mets obtained that first season was the beloved first baseman of the old Brooklyn Dodgers, Gil Hodges. Few players in New York baseball history were as beloved as Hodges. Hodges hit the first home run in Mets history. But at this time, Gil was 38 years old and at the end of his career. With the start of the 1963 season, Hodges retired and moved on to manage the Washington Senators of the American League. He would, however, come back to New York a few years later and lead the Mets to the promised land. Although the 1962 Mets were incredibly bad and lost a record number of games, they were also enormously popular. Fans across the nation embraced these lovable losers. They were the clown princes of Major League Baseball. Playing in the old Polo Grounds in their inaugural season, the amazing Mets drew close to 1 million fans. It seems that the fans didn't care that the team found new and previously unknown ways to lose ball games. They were just happy to have National League Baseball back in New York. In the 5 seasons following the 1962 campaign, the New York Mets firmly established their place as baseball's most entertaining and lovable losers. They were not quite as bad as they were in 1962, but they were nonetheless the worst team in baseball. The team finished last in 1963, 64, and 65. The Mets moved into their new home, Shea Stadium, in 1964, and Casey Stengel retired in 1965. Wes Westrom, the old New York Giant catcher, took over as skipper. In 1966, they reached the dizzying heights of 9th place in a 10-team league, but dropped back into the cellar in 1967. During this entire time, however, the organization was signing talented young players and developing them in the minor leagues. Youngsters such as Bud Harrelson, Cleon Jones, Jerry Koosman, Nolan Ryan, Gary Gentry, and a pitcher named Tom Seaver were moving up in the Mets farm system. The team needed a manager who could mold this group into a winning team. Manager Wes Westrom resigned late in the 1967 season, and in a trade with the Washington Senators that winter, the Mets obtained Gil Hodges to manage the club. When Hodges came back to New York, the Mets became serious. Hitting first baseman for the beloved and legendary Brooklyn Dodgers of the 1950s, Gil Hodges fashioned an excellent career. Across 18 major league seasons, he hit a solid .273 and blasted 370 home runs. He was also one of the greatest defensive first basemen in the game's history and was selected to the National League All-Star team 8 times. In 1955, when the Brooklyn Dodgers finally beat the Yankees in a World Series to win their one and only World Championship while in Brooklyn, it was Gil Hodges who knocked in both runs in Brooklyn's 2-0 victory in the 7th game. Gil Hodges was also a man of great character, dignity, and courage. Although he was a very large and powerful man, it was inner strength that motivated the big first baseman. He was a man of high ideals. He held a special place in the hearts of fans and players alike. In many ways, he typified the American hero of a bygone era. a man of action and few words. He took everything in stride with humility, grace, modesty, and dignity. After his retirement as a player in 1963, Gil went on to manage the Washington Senators. Taking over a last-place team, Gil moved them up in the standings from last place to 6th place in 4 years. The Senators didn't have the talent to compete with many of the better teams in the league, but under Hodges, they played sound, fundamental baseball and always gave 100%. After the 1967 season, Hodges came home to manage the Mets. During the 1968 campaign, Hodges spent much time assessing the talent on the ball club and analyzing what was needed to make the team a contender. Indeed, the Mets had a solid core of good young players. It was obvious the team was improving tremendously under the strong and steady leadership of Gil Hodges. In 1968, they would win 73 games, by far the best season in their short history.
I was in awe of Gil. And then, of course, we went to spring training in '68, and he just didn't know the players. He didn't know what he had. And he was teaching in '68 and evaluating.
I came over the first year. '68 was the first year for Gil from Washington. A.G. and Al Weiss and myself came from the White Sox team. And so we were all new to know each other. But then I found out in just a short period of time, he's going to use you somewhere in the game. Be ready. And he did that with the veterans. He did it with the rookies. He instilled confidence in the rookies. He was great. He was probably the greatest manager that I played for.
I think in 1968 he had to try and weed out people that he felt wasn't going to fit into the organization. You know, there were a lot of still cast-offs of guys that we were acquiring, trying to fill in pieces of the puzzle. And of course, you know, he evaluated his own players. Gil was his own man, a very strict disciplinarian. He had his own set of rules, one set of rules for the whole team, and he wanted you to play the game his way. And you know, with the Mets, when you're on a bad ball club, and I was part of a bad ball club for 7 years, you know, losing is contagious just like winning is. And you develop bad habits, and you've got to change that if you're trying to rebuild, and he did.
Gil Hodges was not able to finish the season on the Mets bench. On September 24th in Atlanta, Hodges suffered a mild heart attack. He spent the remainder of the 1968 season and that winter regaining his health and was ready again to lead the club in the spring of 1969. Many experts agreed that the Mets could become legitimate contenders in perhaps 2 or 3 years. As the 1969 season approached, no one had any idea whatsoever that the amazing Mets would astound the nation. It was Gil Hodges who molded the Mets into champions.
Gil was always a guy that had a strong hand and a strong voice and meant what he said. Was a great leader, and everyone respected him a great deal.
Gil was amazing, I guess. It never ceased to amaze me that there was nothing that he didn't know was going on.
And we had several meetings where Gil, he does not tolerate mental mistakes. And we would know who messed up the night before, and the next day at practice, at batting practice and field and everything, you'd see Gil, he'd hit fungos to the infielders, then he would walk down third base with a fungo stick in his hand, and we knew who messed up. If it was a second baseman or a shortstop or whomever, he would work his way around. I said, just watch him. And sure enough, he worked around to the guy that's, pardon the expression, messed up the night before, and you knew what was going on.
He didn't miss many tricks. He was on top of it. If you watched Hodges play cribbage in the clubhouse, he was like a machine. He was like a computer. He was like IBM mainframe, you know what I mean? I mean, he'd get his cards and he'd discard it faster, add it up total. I mean, his brain worked so well and so quickly and so accurately, man. It was, you know, I mean, it was amazing to watch. You respected it, and you felt like, you know, this guy's on top of his game.
Gil was always a very positive guy, and at the same time he was teaching. He was getting into people's heads, and I think probably the summation at the end of people's careers with the handling of Gil Hodges was that he made us better players. We were talented players, but it's much more than that. We were smarter players, more professional players.
He didn't say a whole lot. But I mean, but you knew that when he said something to you, he meant it, you know. I mean, like if he says he's gonna fine you for this, fine you for that. Once you did it, I mean, he never come to you and tell you, say, well, okay, I'm gonna fine you. He just write it down and put it in your locker. And if you didn't pay him, he'd go to the front office and tell them to take it out of your check, you know. It was that kind of a guy, you know. I mean, when he said well, he's gonna do something, he did it, you know.
My attitude towards Gil really changed. You know, in '68, I was a regular player on the ball club. I was very productive, and of course, he did come in and change a lot of things. And of course, nobody likes change, especially if you think you're a star, even though we were on a ball club. So we all started from scratch. And he was a difficult person at times because he was very introverted. You know, maybe I was also. So you had two people clashing. Ron Svoboda was a little bit more vocal in his disagreements with Gil. I just had one big disagreement at the end of the year when I was frustrated and struggling, and of course that led to problems, and I almost got traded one winter. But the following year, I played, we won the World Series. Then I got sent down to the minor leagues, which was a complete shock. But I played my way back to the big leagues by hitting .300 in the minor leagues, producing, and then Gil gave me another opportunity, so I respected him for that. He didn't hold a grudge. If you could play for Gil and played and performed and did your job, he would play you, and I appreciated it. Unfortunately, he passed away 2 or 3 years after that. Otherwise, I would have liked to have played the last 7 or 8, 9 years under Gil because he appreciated what I was able to do, and I appreciated his straightforwardness where you knew your position, and he never changed. Once the season started, if he said you were going to platoon, you platooned. He never really got off that path, regardless of who was out there, what was going on. So I appreciate it. And I had 2 good years, and then Gil passed away. But he was a great baseball man. He knew the game. He wanted to play on pitching and defense, how to play the game, the proper way of playing the game, and you know, exploiting the other team's weakness. And once you learned his methodology, I'll tell you what, you could play for him.